But you cannot be afraid, my friends, for I only take those who will conquer their fear. Is that you? Who will conquer their fear tonight? Good. If you conquer your fear, my friends, I will bestow upon you the greatest gift of all, the gift of immortality. Who wishes for an immortal elixir?
Last time on Into the Fog, we discussed the character of Dr. Richard Oddfellow, a mysterious individual tied to the origins of Jack the Clown. Oddfellow was originally conceived in the year 2000 and offered a link to the morbid past of Jack. In the original lore, Oddfellow was merely a shady showman who was responsible for the death of spectators at one of his traveling carnivals. While keeping his carnival moving to evade authorities, Oddfellow came across Jack Schmidt, a man with propensity for entertainment. Oddfellow hired Jack, who donned a clown outfit and became the icon we know today, Jack the Clown. Jack, however, had a dark secret, as he was a murderer. While traveling with the carnival, Jack murdered 13 children. He carried the bodies of those children around with him, stuffing their bodies into a set of trunks. Eventually, authorities would close in on Jack as the culprit of these missing children. Jack tried to plead to Oddfellow to help him, but fearing that this would lead to his own capture, Oddfellow had Jack killed. Oddfellow would sadistically display the bodies of the murdered children and Jack in a morbid exhibit. Years later, Jack would be resurrected and set out to seek revenge on Oddfellow, who was somehow still alive. Jack would get his vengeance, kill Oddfellow, and take control of his carnival and possessions. This included a mysterious cane, which may or may not have been the source of a power, which is how Oddfellow was still alive so many years later. If you want to hear the full original lore, I highly recommend viewing that episode of Into the Fog. Flash forward to 2023 with Dr. Oddfellow as the icon for Halloween Horror Nights 32. Not only would Oddfellow be the anchor for the event, but the team greatly fleshed out his backstory in order to do it. Many aspects of the original lore were better realized and gave a lot of answers to certain questions. Some things have also been glossed over or omitted entirely. Let's start with the character himself. Probably the biggest change is making Oddfellow the first African-American HHN icon. Oddfellow Prime, we'll call him, takes inspiration from a myriad of things, but his furred trench coat conjures images of Tony Todd's Candyman. His top hat and etched symbol on his forehead evoke a feeling of magic and mysticism. Some have likened him to Dr. Fassler, the main antagonist from The Princess and the Frog. This is especially true for a younger showman Oddfellow. The team also went to great lengths to tie Oddfellow into all of HHN, not just HHN 32. As we talked about in the last episode, it was tradition for HHN icons to have their own house at their respective events. There are a few exceptions, such as Fear and Lady Luck. However, for HHN 32, Oddfellow would not only get his own house, but he would directly tie into the scare zones and an overarching story for the character, allowing guests to explore his backstory. Rather than focusing on his ties to Jack the Clown, his backstory is more about the mysterious cane and his thirst for immortality. The new Dr. Oddfellow is obsessed with immortality. He is a student of magic and mysticism and will do anything he can to obtain that immortality. In order to do this, Oddfellow harnesses the power of the Zodiac to obtain the power needed to steal souls to achieve his immortality. This ties into his symbol, which is etched into his forehead and other symbols around his body. While at the event, Oddfellow's symbol can be seen in various locations, stamping his presence all over the place. Dr. Oddfellow's quest began in the 1920s when a young Oddfellow traveled to the dangerous Jungle of Doom to search for a powerful crystal skull.
Finally, my search is over. I feel the power of the glowing skull of souls surging through my veins and giving me what I so crave. Immortality!
The skull would give Oddfellow powers. To test these powers, he used the magic of the skull to transform the local wild and plant life into grotesque creations of his own twisted mind and making. The crystal skull itself would eventually sit atop his cane of souls. In the late 1930s, Dr. Oddfellow took his traveling carnival, Oddfellow's Grand Circus and Exposition, around the country. Oddfellow would put his showman skills to the test, enticing people to attend his carnival with promises of thrills and excitement. The carnival was a ruse, as Oddfellow would capture and torture the patrons and force them to work as performers in the carnival. When Oddfellow felt it was time, he sacrificed their souls in the name of the Zodiac, which was where the source of his power came from. Oddfellow would mutilate the corpses of his victims and meld them into grotesque versions of the Zodiac to achieve his ultimate goal, immortality. Once the Zodiac sacrifice was done, to finish the ritual, he would paint odd symbols all over the carnival. Once that was done, Oddfellow would burn any signs adorning his name and abandon the carnival, covering his tracks, moving on to another location. A particular stop for the carnival in the Midwest during the Dust Bowl era is the setting for Oddfellow's house, Dr. Oddfellow's Twisted Origins. The house itself ends with Oddfellow killing you and sending your soul to another realm. Here, the new lore starts to diverge from the original lore a bit. As you enter the house, guests can see a wanted poster for Jack Schmidt, who was already working at the carnival. While traversing the house, various references to Jack the Clown can be seen all over the place, mostly in the form of his original clown outfit. While in the original lore, Jack killed 13 children, which is why the authorities were on his heels and stuffed them into trunks, that part isn't explicitly said here. There is a scene in the house where one of the carnival performers is stuffing a body into a trunk surrounded by spectators, but it doesn't appear to be tied to that. It is said that Oddfellow still stuffed Jack's body into his own box and used it as a grisly exhibit. Jack's demise has also been tweaked. How Jack the Clown became a supernatural being is also now explained. Originally, Oddfellow had Jack killed for fear of being caught for his own crimes. Here, Oddfellow himself kills Jack, which guests can see play out in the house with the shadow effect. During the struggle to kill Jack, Oddfellow is injured when Jack scratches him across the face. The blood from the scratch lands on Jack, granting him the same immortality powers as Oddfellow. The injury also leaves Oddfellow scarred for the rest of his life. The ringmaster outfit Oddfellow is wearing is also the same one Jack would eventually don after killing Oddfellow years later. Oddfellow would continue his pursuit of power despite what happened in the 30s. He continued to scour the world, time, and space for creatures and artifacts that would continue to increase his power and feed his desire for immortality. His mini macabre empire would branch out into a shipping company which helped transport all kinds of monsters and mayhem he could find. In the 1940s, a particular shipment had an accident, unleashing all sorts of ghouls into a San Francisco shipping yard. The Scare Zone Shipyard 32, Horrors Unhinged, sheds light on exactly what kind of powers Oddfellow has, and also ties him into Horror Night's past. In the new lore, Oddfellow not only can travel to different realms, dimensions, and even time, but he could also disguise his appearance. Oddfellow is a shapeshifter, and he can become anything he wants. Guests who attended the event can spot which variants was Oddfellow in different zones by the scar left on his face by Jack the Clown. In Shipyard 32, Oddfellow disguises himself as a werewolf and joins in on the chaos by the monsters running amok. Of particular note are some of the actual creatures Oddfellow has procured during this particular shipment. They tie into Halloween Horror Nights past. The Tooth Fairy from the house Revenge of the Tooth Fairy is present, along with the shipping crate stamped with its name. A bat creature from both Scare Zones, Grown Evil and Evil's Roots, is flapping around. In addition, one of the evil fairy creatures from Evil's Roots can be seen locked up in a cage. Nosferatu also has his own shipping crate and is seen locked up in the same cage during a different cast. This creature has been seen multiple times throughout HHN. He's been in everything from the Hive to one of the vampires roaming around with the Strengoid Legion during HHN 22. A Skulder is also frightening guests. Skulders were first seen in the house The Spawning back in 2009, lurking in the sewer systems of Cary, Ohio, and they most recently reappeared in the house Welcome to Scary, Horror in the Heartland. The familiar creatures running around Shipyard 32 heavily implies that Oddfellow has secretly been in and out of past Halloween Horror Nights events, but more on that later. In the early 1960s, Dr. Oddfellow was looking to expand his powers even more. In order to achieve this, he realized the potential of another immortal creature, the vampire, to help him do this. To be successful, Oddfellow would have to infiltrate the world of the vampires. In an account later from a vampire seemingly under Oddfellow's spell, we are told Oddfellow disguised himself as a vampire named Erlo Wolf to gain access to the Council of the Vampires. He fooled them all by recounting the tale of a circus he was working at in the 30s being attacked by vampires. He survived and became one himself. This tactic was successful, and Oddfellow was granted a seat on the council. In 1968, Oddfellow attempted to convince the council to allow fellow vampires to go on a bloodthirsty frenzy and let loose. The leader of the council, a vampire named Alado, was against this idea. However, Oddfellow used his powers to sway the other members of the council to approve the move. In 1969, Oddfellow and a group of vampires descended upon a music festival in New York where the creatures attacked and killed the festival goers. Oddfellow captured the souls of those who were killed in his cane to amplify his power. It is implied that Oddfellow took Alado and killed him as a sacrifice to boost his own power. As discussed in the original lore, in the year 2000, Jack the Clown is resurrected by a careless individual. Jack would run amok for years before learning that Oddfellow was still alive. In 2007, Jack would track Oddfellow down and ultimately have his revenge for killing him all those years ago. And of course, Jack would take possession of Oddfellow's cane, his carnival, and other effects. After being killed, Oddfellow's own soul was sent to the Zodiac Dimension. After being sent to the Zodiac Dimension, Oddfellow's power had weakened and he was trapped. 16 years later, Oddfellow found a way out of the Zodiac Dimension and was unleashed back onto the world.
Then, my friends, you have all come to the right place. For I prepared so much for each and every one of you. Welcome tonight to my night of delight and horror. I am your host, Dr. Oddfellow.
Somehow regaining his Cane of Souls, Oddfellow would entice guests to experience the horror of Halloween Horror Nights 32 in Dr. Oddfellow's collection of horror. Now more obsessed than ever with immortality, Oddfellow would entice guests with the promise of their own immortality as they traverse the event. The team put together an event where guests could retrace the steps of Oddfellow throughout the years as he pursued his quest for immortality. Starting in the 1920s with Jungle of Doom, the carnival itself in 1939, the shipyard in the 1940s, and the vampire-rated music festival in 1969 in Vamp 69. Guests were also granted entry to the Zodiac Dimension in Dark Zodiac. The event also heavily tied Oddfellow to Halloween Horror Nights past. With Oddfellow's powers, he could easily jump in and out of different events, perhaps disguising himself to always have been watching or procuring different oddities for his carnival. It is also heavily implied that Oddfellow is an ally of fear. Previous icons are heralds of fear. Jack the Clown is chaos, the caretaker is death, the director is sacrifice, the storyteller is legend, and the usher is vengeance. Oddfellow appears to not be a herald, but in cahoots with fear, perhaps helping him spread the horror over the course of Halloween Horror Nights itself. It is certainly clear that Oddfellow has had a hand in the event in some way over the years. While Dr. Oddfellow has now made his presence known, there's still more to explore in the future. How did he regain his Cane of Souls? Where was it? Did Jack still have it? Was there a fight? All intriguing questions for future events. I hope you enjoyed this journey into the fog. I'm Agent Legacy, and thanks for watching.